Hello and welcome back to another episode of Reflecting Value, the podcast where we ask the big questions about cultural value in a reflective space. You may notice my voice is a little different from the previous episodes in this series. I have a sore throat that I just cannot shift, which isn't great for recording purposes. But in this episode, I'm handing over the reins to Anna Wolf, who's going to host a conversation with Daniel Regan and Bablu Mia to reflect on their experiences of the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's impacted on the people they work with and their own practice. I'm off to grab a lemsip, but I'll be back at the end of the episode. For now, over to Anna.
Okay, so hi, my name is Anna. I'm from London Arts and Health, and I'm really excited to bring this special edition of the Centre for Cultural Values podcast to you. I've got two very amazing guests with me today to chat through all things creativity, culture, and the pandemic. So I'm going to let Daniel and Bablu introduce themselves, and we're going to have a chat about how we have worked through the pandemic. So hello, both of you.
Hello.
Hello.
Daniel, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organisation?
Absolutely. So I'm Daniel Regan, and I am a photographic artist and the founder and executive director of an organisation called the Arts and Health Hub, which is a not-for-profit organisation that supports artists working in the field of arts and health. So we provide both practical professional development opportunities, but also look at affective and emotional support for artists working in the sector.
Amazing, thank you. And Bablu, same question. If you can introduce yourself and your wonderful organisation.
So I'm Bablu. I run a company called Trapped in Zone 1. It's a BAME-led arts collective based in East London. So our aim is to engage with community groups and organisations through creative projects that we run, and hopefully improve the health and well-being of diverse communities.
Fab, thank you. And I'm really interested to chat to you both because I feel like there's lots of crossover in your practice, how you engage the people that you work with, but they are different groups of people. So Bablu, you're kind of on the ground delivering work to young people in Tower Hamlets and around London. And Daniel, you are kind of supporting the artists, the practitioners that might be delivering those workshops and those projects. So I want to kind of take you back to the beginning of the pandemic. Yes, we're still in the pandemic, and think maybe a bit about how your practice or your work changed when the pandemic first started.
I remember in the initial first couple of weeks of the first lockdown, you know, as lots and lots of freelancers did, lots of the artists that we support lost a huge amount of work. And so we created space to just have weekly check-ins for artists to talk about the shared difficulties, but without any kind of emphasis on sharing any work, but just to get together and see what was happening across everybody's lives. And that kind of really made me think about the ecosystem of the artists that have been supporting participants for so long, but were suddenly dropped. Contracts were kind of dropped, work dried up and vanished. And so my organisation started to think about what can we do to support those artists emotionally, but also thinking about as people emerge out of the pandemic, what kind of professional development opportunities can we provide so that as things do open up, there's opportunities there, or people have had time to kind of develop skills or invest in themselves. That led on to a much wider project, which I can talk about a bit later.
Great. And I feel like in some ways the pandemic sort of accelerated some of this stuff. It brought to the fore very quickly, like some of the problems and sort of structural issues and things that all artists, practitioners maybe struggle with. And and same for participants as well, I guess, Bablu. Like, it suddenly really highlighted lots of inequalities, lots of maybe participants who haven't been able to access culture. Did you find that in your organisation, Bablu?
So our work is mainly based on face-to-face communication. So when the whole pandemic started, lockdown came to effect, our work stopped as well. So we couldn't do much. Never really heard about Zoom until then. So we had to adapt straight away. How can we still stay connected, support the people that we support, and make them feel like there's someone on the upper side who they could talk to, do some art as well, and so forth, and hopefully improve their well kind of being. So we had to basically adapt straight away. Didn't have time, so just had to kind of pick up on where we left off and see if we could just keep carrying on what we have done before the pandemic. So having some supportive friends, I managed to kind of kickstart the work that we did. We got on Zoom, and thankfully somehow we just connected. And using the power of social media, we just reached out to participants and make sure that, you know, they could still take part. And I know it's going to be on Zoom, but it's still something for them to do than just be at home alone. And thankfully, we just carried on. We looked in different forms of ways in which we could do some activities where they could join each week and have some fun.
So Bablu, did it kind of change maybe some of the practices that you were engaging with? For example, did you kind of shift to more like media-based or filmmaking with your young people? Like how did that shift kind of happen?
So through researching at the time and seeing what was working, what weren't working, things along the line of showcasing films, which we haven't done before the pandemic because everything was done within a room and it was all a workshop. We never really showcased the film. So the pandemic gave us an opportunity when everyone was at home all day long, just seeing films upon films. Why don't we just put on a showcase of short films but made from the community, which they can see and learn about each other, ask questions and so forth. And that was something that we tried month after month. And somehow it just started to connect and click and work and so forth. And then once lockdown sort of came to an end over the summer, we tried to move from Zoom into going outside and making short films so we could carry that on. And that's something that we did. We engaged with young people, just trying to find out how the pandemic impacted them, what did they do. So like going to the park was really a great thing, which they learned just to chill out and so forth. So we made these short films over the summer, and then we showcased that again when lockdown came into effect again. And we just carried that on. So whatever we were trying to learn as we went along, we implemented that.
So making those kind of moments for your young people. And Daniel, I know that you had you did some research with your artists and practitioners and kind of asked them how they felt during the pandemic, and that drove some further work around kind of supporting artists. I wonder if you can talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so I think what I was seeing is lots of kind of surveying of how organisations had been impacted by COVID, but the sort of freelance workforce wasn't really getting much of a say, and particularly around sort of financial support. Lots of freelancers were sort of left in the dirt, and so my organisation works directly with artists. It's artist-led for artists, and we sort of mirrored some of the surveys that wonderful organisations like the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance were doing, but where our questions were obviously aimed at individuals and freelance artists. So we were asking them, what's been the impact of the pandemic, of course, financially, and the impact on your work, but also the impact on your mental health. And then one of the questions that we asked was, what would you like to see from the sector in terms of support? And 3 of those things were mental health support, clinical supervision and mentoring opportunities. And that really gave us the sort of evidence to go to Arts Council England, who funded a pilot project called the Support Hub, which was delivering exactly those three forms of support. So over a year, we were supporting 14 artists with lived experience of mental health difficulties through a peer-to-peer mental health group. We also provided clinical supervision for 6 artists that were working in stressful and demanding environments, such as hospitals and care homes who are at risk of secondary trauma. And then we also supported 3 early career artists in arts and health, matching them up to 3 more experienced mentors. And so for us, although it was a really tricky time, it gave us I guess, a push forward to think about ways to support artists, both practically and professionally, but also emotionally, and to think about the needs of the workforce. And I think that's a real topic of interest. I mean, it was a topic of interest a few years ago, but it's definitely been bumped up the agenda, so that the care and support that we provide to participants is mirrored and paralleled with the workforce going forward. Because these artists are often holding, really tricky, safe spaces, working with vulnerable community groups. And we need to think about how the artists themselves, who are humans and experience emotions, as we all do, how they're also taken care of so that they don't burn out and are able to flourish in their work.
Amazing. And I think what you say is just so true. It's been a topic of interest, but now there's like an acceleration and a real understanding that like caring for the artist practitioners is absolutely core to the work, to the practice, in the way that we care for participants. I wonder then, Daniel, as well, you also highlighted sort of mental health and how we are, if we're engaging in creativity and kind of generating culture, exploring our own cultures, we often, that can attribute to feeling mentally well. I wonder, both of you, did you sort of notice during the pandemic that the people you were working with that were really struggling with their mental health, like Bablu, did you find that the young people were struggling more and that they needed you even more during that kind of early period?
Through the conversation, yes. Generally, when you're young, you want to enjoy life, and when you're restricted, you can't see your school friends and so forth. Does have a huge impact. So, and, just generally just having someone to talk to, just to, just share about how your day's going, and then just feel like you're being cared about was something. As our project continued week after week, we got to see that more. And, mental health, been affecting young people for a long, long time through crime and education, and how exams really impacts on a young person. But when you don't have anyone to talk to, it just increases more and more and more. So having an outlet where you're in a safe space where you could meet people of the same kind of age and do something that you enjoy, so such as the arts, it really helps to kind of open up these things and express in a way that you find it hard to talk to about as well. So us kind of doing that, and the development I saw within the young people over like 4 weeks was immense, from being, really kind of closed and now to being open and about how they were feeling, and they're quite proud about how they felt and so forth. It just shows art is just a massive platform that needs to be used in the right way, and when it does, the outcome is just huge. So for me, it was a great experience for myself to see, the work that I do, does it actually work? And it clearly showed it does work, and we are just continuing that week after week after week now. So, yeah.
And so both of you kind of worked differently as the pandemic kind of kicked in. Now, as we sort of fast forward a bit, 2-3 years in, is there something, or what are you bringing from those like early moments that might sort of stick and stay with you in terms of how you kind of record or take how you kind of implement in your practice when you're working with your groups? what has stayed and what are you leaving behind? Because I feel like people are working more digitally. They're exploring different ways of also being inclusive, like how people might access creative workshops or support, etc., etc. But I also know that people are really fatigued by Zoom and all these kind of digital platforms. But is there what's staying with your organization, and what are you going to leave behind, Daniel?
I think for us initially, the work that we've been doing over the last 6 years is, it's a London-based organisation, so things have been very London-centric and very in-person. And much like the rest of the world, we've sort of embraced technology and digital ways of doing things. But something that I really didn't expect was that the network of artists that we support has massively expanded due to COVID. And that's because a lot of the activities that we were doing suddenly switched to being online. So it's been really fantastic to go from around 300 artists at the beginning of 2020 to now having 1,000 artists across the UK that are accessing all these different types of activities and workshops and professional development opportunities. So that's been absolutely fantastic for us to see the growth. In terms of sustainability, it's thinking about, yes, we're still a London-based organisation, and yes, when we run in-person events, we will be in London because that's where we are, but also thinking about how we can hold on to those people who have been able to find us, find other artists in the network and really discover their tribe. So thinking about the resources that we have to be able to work both in person and physically and digitally. And I think also as somebody who finds working sort of the majority digitally really tiring, I need to think about what's sustainable and what's reasonable for myself as the person that's kind of programming those things. There are some organisations who feel really comfortable delivering everything online or everything in person. And I think we also have to respect the person that is delivering the activities. There are, of course, like amazing increases in access and inclusivity, but we also have to think about the resources that organisations have available. So, for example, last night was the return of our in-person artist peer groups after 20 months, and it was really exciting. But to be able to, for example, live stream an event like that, which is really dynamic and conversational, requires tech resources and human resources that we don't have available as a small organisation that's just project funded. So I think going forward, we're thinking about what the challenges are to working in a mixed kind of hybrid approach. At the moment, it's possible for us to have something that's entirely in person or entirely digital and online. But the challenge is, how can you make, an in-person event available to those online in the moment? Because the resources that takes are enormous. It's not about not wanting to. We want things to be accessible and inclusive. It's about some of the challenges, I think, in terms of tech and resources. And I guess that's something that we'll consider every time we're putting in a funding bid. How can we get around this? How can we be more inclusive? Or how can we distill some of this information so that it can be shared afterwards online? It's just the time and resource it takes to do that.
Yeah, I think this is an assumption sometimes, isn't there, that, you can just kind of set up a laptop, it's really easy, and actually the digital stuff is way more complicated and takes much longer than just actually being in a room and talking with someone face to face sometimes. So you're right. And I think, I think it's about, how we hold those spaces and kind of respect that actually to like you say, to kind of be able to, for example, live stream or provide all that tech support is a huge role in itself. But thinking, but also that the digital kind of offers us kind of elastic ways of sharing and disseminating information, maybe beyond regionally where we're based.
I remember very early on in the pandemic being in some kind of meeting with other artists, and we were discussing the challenges some people were facing in terms of using new software and technology and without the training. So their work had been shifted online, but an organisation hadn't supported them to even understand how to use Zoom. And I really appreciated one person's comment that she just said, "I'm just not doing it. I'm just not delivering my work online because that's not how my work is meant to be experienced. If other people want to do that, that's fine, but I don't want to. And at the time I thought, oh, that's quite a strange comment. But now I sort of really appreciate that we all have our own boundaries and limits of why we became an artist and what feels the best way to kind of deliver the work that we do. The sort of natural assumption that everything can be done online or that an artist wants to do it online, I sort of have a little bit of a pushback against that. Because some people just aren't comfortable in working in certain ways. So I think we have to appreciate the ways in which people want to work and can work, and that somebody else will be delivering what you might need, and they might really enjoy doing that online, or they might only like to do it in person.
Yes, absolutely. And that there's space for all of that. And yeah, like you said, I love that, just the pushback, like, actually, that's not my practice. That's not what I do. Bablu, I wonder, what are you kind of bringing through from the kind of pandemic period, I guess, in terms of like practice? What will kind of stick in your organisation? I know that you work a lot in person. You are kind of giving communities big kind of murals, art experiences and things like that. But there are any kind of parts of the pandemic that have actually been useful and benefited your participants in perhaps working more digitally, for example?
I suppose it has. So doing it online, it meant I could engage with artists from across the country as well that normally would find it hard to come down to where we are and run the workshop. So we work with artists in Germany, Spain, all over the place throughout the pandemic as well, where normally would be quite hard for that to come together in a space. So doing that online, participants got a broad range of experiences of meeting artists either through Zoom, but like having a chance to talk to them, find out who they are, where they're from, why they do the stuff they do, what makes them happy, sad, and so forth. And it was really kind of great to kind of bring that together, and that only happened because we were at home and stuck. So it just showed things can work, and I have taken that on board, and if there's an opportunity to continue that, then I will, because most of our stuff is, are done for face to face. So going back to Zoom again, I don't think it will be something that we would do instantly, but if we have to, then at least we know we've got the skill set now to get onto that.
Amazing. And Daniel, what is the future for Arts and Health Hub? What's going to be next for your organisation?
I think sort of re-emerging back into what feels a bit like real life is really exciting. And something that happened in some of that sort of downtime where we couldn't deliver certain things. So, for example, we had an Arts Council grant to deliver quite a lot of in-person activities across all different venues. And of course, that got put on pause. Parts of it were delivered online, parts of it couldn't be delivered online. And so there's a real flurry of activity as we run a number of events through February and March on the theme of unruly bodies. But something that was really valuable was, I guess, the spirit of partnership across the sort of multiple lockdowns, is where people were thinking about how to work together. And what that's meant for us is developing a really fantastic partnership with the South Bank Centre, who are really interested in working with us on projects that support artists in the sector. And it's also meant that we're now looking at delivering the support hub sort of 2022 and beyond, much bigger, and also in different regions, so that we would be delivering some of those support mechanisms both in London, with partnerships in Manchester, and then of course making sure that the same options to engage are available online. So we're really trying to think about the benefits of working digitally and the access benefits, and just the expansion and partnership opportunities, because there's absolutely sort of no slowing down the demand of the things that we're providing. I don't think we'll ever be able to meet the demand because artists are sort of desperate for this kind of support, but we're thinking about how we can expand outside of London and begin to work with new and exciting partners in other parts of the country.
Amazing. Yeah, I really want to pick up on that idea of demand as well. I think even more so throughout the pandemic, that has been highlighted and increased. We are all kind of starving, I think, for like culture, creativity, connection. And, Daniel, I've been to some of your events throughout the pandemic, and the palpable sense, either in the Zoom room or in real life room, of just like togetherness and sharing and support just really gives you fuel. It makes you really feel really engaged with your practice and connected to the sector as a whole. So that's really exciting to hear that you are expanding and offering this support, to more people across the country. That's fantastic. And Bablu, what about you? What is the future for Trapped in Zone 1? What's going to happen next?
For the short term, the fact that we've been working with young people, I want to give them a platform now to really kind of lead in running projects instead of us, but them to lead. So giving them a big say in how a project should be run, what we should do based on what they want us to do, and just see how we go. I mean, before the pandemic, we worked up north and so forth as well, but because of the pandemic, that had to stop. So hopefully now we reach out again and go up north and do the stuff that we do in east, but from afar, because a lot of people do see the stuff that we do and they really, really enjoy it. So they would like us to bring it to their towns. So hopefully that opportunity will come back again, and we'll get to travel and just showcase, the work in East London does work, and it could work for you as well.
I wonder, actually, Bablu, if you could just quickly reflect on, you were telling me before we started recording about your latest mural, which is in Bow in East London. How has that been going? How's that project been running this weekend?
So our project for Bow was for Black History Month. So whenever we do a project, we try to do something that impacts the community. Just doing something for the sake of it, just makes no sense as well. We want to do something that really makes people alive, appreciate their space, and hopefully get people to get connected through a creative kind of a platform as well. So we were looked at quite a few sites as to where the project should take place. I never really worked in Bow, so it was quite a nice kind of place to go and see. And yeah, we just had a kind of walk through around the estates and found this street where there's a big wall there, but people just walk by, they don't seem to stop. And we just thought, if we were to do a piece of artwork there, maybe there might be a shift in people actually stopping and just seeing something and talking to each other. So over October and so forth, we did workshops and came up with like a theme of what the diversity of people in Bow should be. How can we express that? So working with some young people, they came up with the term of Bow colours to celebrate the people there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we made a concept design of the work, which got approved by the locals. And over the last 2 weeks, we started painting that, and just to see people walking by and stopping and smiling and enjoying the work and sharing their views about how last 2 years been so tough, and they never really have spent time talking to someone in case they caught the COVID and so forth. But now, because there's an artwork there, it's a great excuse now to stop and talk, and everyone appreciating the life slowly more and more and more. So the whole ethos about why creativity is important and how it really impacts community, it was just great to see in person over days, but hundreds of people just walking by and stopping and making some really nice comments about the work and how bright it looks now, when the street was quite dull, but now you've got colours and it's just amazing, and can they have some more and more and more? And I'm like, we'll try and see what we can do, but the whole point of these kind of projects is to plant a seed and see if it would grow. And clearly inside the 2 weeks, the seed has grown so big that we will come back again and do a lot more things. But just a great experience from people.
Amazing.
Just like enjoying artwork, and last 2 years hopefully will come to an end and people can enjoy each other's company. And if that comes through art, then it's good completely as well. So yeah.
I love that, the value of the conversation as well, like stopping and talking to someone. And throughout the pandemic, obviously, actually being kind of in close contact and just talking to someone in real life it's been difficult, hasn't it? We've had long periods where that has not been encouraged.
No, I mean, it was absolutely huge. So yeah, just yesterday when we finished the work, this guy just came along, and he goes, for 2 years he just haven't spoken to someone. So,
wow.
But now there's an artwork there. He just said, I had an excuse now to come up to you and talk to you and just learn about this work and why you done that work. And once we explained the whole process of why we done the work, he just felt so chuffed, like, this is amazing. And yeah, it just, art just brings people together. That's what we're trying to do and say.
Amazing.
And when it does happen in a really bespoke way, it's not planned.
Yeah.
The feeling that we get is just can't explain it. It's just amazing. So even though we do the work for participants, the benefit that we get as well is just immense. So that enables us to continue the work that we do. So I mean, for us, the experience was huge as well. So completely
fantastic. And finally, Daniel, I wondered if you could just tell us about your Unruly Bodies season. So you've got this kind of this series of events coming up starting in February with Arts and Health Hub. I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about this.
So the Unruly Body season of events is a mixture of online and in-person activities, exploring the theme of unruly bodies. So bodies and minds that are in resistance, bodies that are different, bodies that are celebrated and denigrated. And we have a number of online artist talks. So with Claire Sunho Lee, who is exploring a particular project called Tell Me What I'm Remembering, regarding personal experience around disclosure of her having leukemia as a child, that she didn't know that she actually had leukemia as a child. So she had these kind of intrusive thoughts and memories, but couldn't quite place them until somebody accidentally disclosed that she had this condition when she was younger. There's also Heather Agyapong, who will be talking about her performance, which is called The Body Remembers, about Black women's experience of trauma. And then we also have Jamisha Prescott talking about her experience of living with a chronic condition and creating an online community in response to that. And so it's really platforming artists whose kind of minds and bodies are perhaps a little different to the sort of ways that we think people might be healthy or traditional, and kind of pushing back and celebrating difference. And we also have some in-person workshops in South London, and all this is leading up to the Unruly Bodies exhibition at Scene 15 Gallery in Peckham, which will be in March. And that's with two artists. One is called Liberty Antonia Sadler, whose illustration work explores her experience of being a fat queer artist, and does these amazing illustrations all around body image and body acceptance and queer sexuality. And the second artist being Fen Eddie Gardner, whose illustration work explores her experience of living with ADHD and the unruly mind. And so it's really exciting to work on a season of events, bringing together both online audiences but also in-person audiences. So all the information regarding that is over on the events page on the Arts and Health Hub website. So I hope to see some of you there.
Fantastic. Yes, I've definitely signed up to a few events already. It looks really, really brilliant. And again, I love that blend, Daniel, of having some things online and some things in person. It gives us, the audience, like a real choice as to how we engage with the work, which is Something that I have enjoyed about the pandemic, I guess, as someone who actually likes to go to things online, I find that a bit easier in my life. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, thank you to you both for talking and chatting to us about your organizations and how you've worked throughout the pandemic. It's just been really, really interesting to listen how you've kind of innovated in each of your organizations and thought about the best ways to kind of keep participants engaged and hold participants, and also, continue conversations about creativity, health, well-being, all of those amazing, brilliant things. So thank you so much for chatting to me today, and speak to you soon.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
There's a lot to take away and reflect on from this conversation, and I'd like to extend my thanks to Anna, Daniel and Bablu for having such an open and honest discussion about their pandemic experiences. Share your thoughts on this episode using #ReflectingValue on Twitter. And don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. See you next time.